Han Feizi. Chapter 1. The First Interview with the King of Shin, a Memorial. Your Majesty, I have heard the following. A person who speaks without knowing is not wise. A person who knows but remains silent is not loyal. Any minister who lacks loyalty should be condemned to death. If a minister speaks untruths, they should also face the same punishment. With this understanding, I humbly speak all that I have heard and request your Majesty to hold me accountable for any wrongdoing. I have heard that all the states in the world are forming an alliance, known as the Perpendicular Union, with Chao in the center, Yan in the north, Wei in the south, and confederating with Qing, seeking the support of Kai, and also aligning with Han, with the intention of challenging and causing difficulties for Qin. But personally, I find this plan amusing because these allies embody all three causes of ruin. They are on a conspiracy against Qin, which could lead to their downfall. As it is said, a poorly governed country attacking a well-governed country will lead to ruin. A wicked country attacking a righteous country will lead to ruin. And a country going against the natural course, when attacking a country following the natural course, will also face ruin. Presently, the Allies' treasuries and armories are not full, and their granaries and storehouses are empty. Despite enlisting a large number of soldiers from their gentry and commoners, they lack the will to fight to the death. Among them, many assume positions of authority, but they lack the determination to face death in battle, even if threatened with naked blades in the front and axes and anvils from behind. This is not because the gentry and commoners are incapable of fighting to the death, but rather because their superiors fail to motivate them. The rewards promised are not given, and the punishments announced are not carried out. When trust in reward and punishment is lost, the people will not fight to the death. In contrast, the state of Qin issues clear commands and carries out rewards and punishments accordingly, distinguishing men of merit from those without merit. Thus, the people of Qin, despite having no experience with bandits since childhood, are willing to face danger upon hearing news of hostilities. They fearlessly prepare to sacrifice themselves for their country, as they hold a deep respect for courageous death. Truly, one man resolved to die bravely can overcome 10 enemies who fear death, and 10 brave men can conquer 100 cowardly enemies. Likewise, 100 brave men can overcome 1,000 cowardly enemies, and 1,000 brave men can defeat 10,000 cowardly enemies. With 10,000 brave men united, they can subdue all under heaven, the entire world. In these days, the state of Qin possesses a vast territory that spans several thousand square li, and it boasts a renowned army consisting of tens of thousands of soldiers. None of the other countries in all under heaven can match the effectiveness of Qin's rewards and punishments, nor can they rival the advantages presented by its geographical features. With these strengths, Qin can achieve more than just conquering all under heaven. It can easily establish dominance over other nations. Throughout history, Qin has been successful in warfare, always emerging victorious and never failing to conquer its enemies, breaking through obstacles and expanding its territory over thousands of li. This has been its remarkable accomplishment. However, lately, the effectiveness of Qin's weapons and armor has diminished, the strength and morale of its people have declined, its resources and reserves have become scarce, and its agricultural lands lie fallow. The granaries and storehouses are empty. As a result, neighboring feudal lords no longer obey Qin, and it has not yet secured the title of hegemonic ruler. The reason for this situation lies in the fact that Qin's state councillors are not demonstrating sufficient loyalty. I dare to speak the truth. In the past, the state of Kai in the south defeated Qing, in the east vanquished Sung, in the west subdued Qin, in the north overpowered Yan, and in the center utilized Han and Wei. With its vast territory and strong military, Kai emerged victorious in warfare, enforcing its edicts and decrees throughout all under heaven. Qi's boundaries were established by the limpid Kai stream and the muddy Yellow River, and its frontiers were secured by long walls and large dikes. In 5 successive wars, Kai achieved victory. However, due to its failure in one war, Kai lost its power and influence. This demonstrates that warfare is always a matter of life and death for the ruler of a powerful state. Furthermore, I have heard the saying, "On removing traces, leave no root, and be no neighbor to any catastrophe. There shall then survive no catastrophe." During the war with the state of Qing, Qin had the upper hand and launched a surprise attack on the city of Ying in the districts of Tungting, Wutu, and Changnan, forcing the ruler and ministers of Qing to seek refuge in Chen. At that critical moment, if Qin had closely pursued the fleeing Qing forces, it could have taken the entire Qing state. The people and the land of Qing would have become valuable assets for Qin, enabling them to weaken Kai and Yen in the east and devastate the three Qins in the center. By doing so, Qin could have quickly claimed the title of hegemonic ruler and subjected neighboring feudal lords to tribute. However, Qin's state councilors chose to retreat and, even worse, made peace with the Qings, allowing them to reclaim their lost territories, re-establish their cultural practices, and regain their former strength. Consequently, Qing was able to gather support from all under heaven to oppose Qin's ambitions, and this marked the first time Qin lost the path to hegemony. Another time, when all the states in all under heaven formed a wicked alliance and positioned their forces at the foot of Mount Hua, His Majesty, in accordance with his own edicts, commanded the army to rout them. The soldiers marched as far as the outer walls of Liang, and after besieging the city for several tens of days, they were able to capture it. The capture of Liang could have led to the fall of the Wei state. If Wei fell, the friendly relationship between Chao and Qing would come to an end, putting Chao in peril and rendering Qing helpless. In this way, Qin could weaken Kai and Yen in the east, and exert control over the three Qins in the center, securing the title of hegemonic ruler and bringing all neighboring feudal lords under tribute. However, instead of seizing this opportunity, her state councilors led the troops in retreat and even made peace with the Weis, allowing them to regain their lost territory and re-establish their power over the people. They then led all under heaven to face the west and caused Qin difficulties. This marked the second time the path to hegemony was lost. In the days of old, Marquis Sang, while ruling Qin, utilized the soldiers of one country to serve two purposes, leading to a lifelong exposure of Qin's soldiers in foreign lands. The gentry and commoners suffered at home, and as a result, His Majesty never achieved the title of hegemonic ruler. This marked the third time the path to hegemony was lost. The Chao clan, indeed, governs a central state inhabited by diverse populations. Their people are frivolous and difficult to rule, their rewards and punishments lack credibility, their geographical advantages are limited, and their superiors fail to bring out the best in their people. These are all signs of a doomed state. Yet, without concern for the welfare of the masses, they dared to mobilize their gentry and commoners, stationed their forces in the suburbs of Chongping, and contested with Qin in the districts of Shangtang and Han. In response, His Majesty, by virtue of his own edicts, ordered the army to rout them and captured Wuhan. At that time, the chaos were divided and lacked mutual attachment, and the nobles and commoners did not trust each other. Naturally, Han Tan could not hold out for long. If Qin were to take Han Tan, occupy Shantung and Ho Chien, advance westward to attack Shu Wu, cross the Yangchang Ascent, conquer Tai and Shangtang without resistance, and then proceed to Tungyang and Ho Wai, Chao, Han, Qing, and Wei would all fall. In this scenario, Qin could weaken Kai and Yen in the east, dismantle the White Horse Ford, and flood the Wei clan. As a result, the three Qins would fall, and the Unionists would fail. His Majesty could then wait with ease for all under heaven to submit, securing the title of hegemonic ruler. However, the state councilors once again led the troops in retreat and made peace with the chaos. Despite the intelligence of His Majesty and the strength of the Qin soldiers, the opportunity for hegemony was lost, and no territory was gained, only insults from a doomed state, all due to the incompetence of the state councilors. Indeed, Chao, despite being doomed to ruin, managed to avoid it, while Qin, worthy of achieving hegemony, failed to attain it. These were the first reasons why the ability of Qin's state councilors came into question by all under heaven. Furthermore, when Qin launched a fresh attack on Han Tan, its soldiers were unable to capture the city. They abandoned their armor and crossbows, withdrew, and displayed signs of weakness. This was the second reason why all under heaven questioned Qin's strength. Later, when Qin retreated to the suburbs of Li Sha and faced renewed engagements, they were unable to achieve victory and had to leave the front line due to lack of supplies. This became the third reason why all under heaven questioned Qin's strength. Thus, in the past, all under heaven managed to undermine the ability of Qin's state councilors internally and weaken their military strength externally. From this perspective, I believe that the union of all under heaven has faced little resistance. Currently, within Qin's borders, armor and weapons are losing their sharpness, and both the gentry and commoners are falling ill. The reserves are depleting, and the fields lie fallow, while the granaries and storehouses stand empty. Outside of Qin, all under heaven stands firmly united against her. Your Majesty, it is crucial to be concerned about such a crisis. In addition, I have heard the saying, be alarmed and trembling and act more carefully day after day. If you act carefully in due manner, you may hold all under heaven under your sway. This can be proven by historical examples. In the past, King Chao, as the Son of Heaven, commanded hundreds of thousands of troops from all under heaven, with his army draining the rivulet Kai on the left flank and the rivulet Huan on the right flank until the Kai ran dry and the Huan's water stopped flowing. His intention was to cause difficulties for King Wu of Zhou. However, with only 3,000 troops all clad in white armor, King Wu defeated Chao in a single day of battle, capturing him, taking over his territory, and subduing his subjects, with no one in the world grieving over the event. Similarly, Earl Qi once led the forces of 3 countries to attack Viscount Sang of Chao at Xinyang. By cutting down the Qin stream and flooding the city for 3 months, he brought Chao to the brink of downfall. However, Viscount Sang consulted divination on a tortoise shell, interpreted bamboo slips, and read omens foretelling gains and losses. Based on this, he decided which country he should surrender to. He then sent his envoy, Chong Mang Tan, who stealthily escaped from the city through the water. Chong Mang Tan rejected the covenant that Earl Qi had made with the other 2 countries and won the support of the latter's forces. With their help, he captured Earl Qi, restored the original territory to Viscount Sang, and turned the situation in his favor. Currently, Qin possesses a vast territory that spans several thousand square li, and boasts a renowned army numbering in the hundreds of thousands. Regarding the implementation of rewards and punishments through their commands and orders, as well as the advantages and disadvantages presented by their geographical features, no other country in all under heaven can compare to Qin. With such strengths, Qin has the potential to conquer and dominate all under heaven. Therefore, I, your servant, despite facing the death penalty, humbly request an audience with your Majesty to discuss the right strategy to break up the perpendicular union of all under heaven, capture Chao, ruin Han, subject Qing and Wei, and befriend Kai and Yen. By doing so, we can secure the title of hegemonic ruler and bring all neighboring feudal lords under tribute. May your Majesty kindly listen to this memorial. If, despite our efforts, the perpendicular union remains intact, Chao remains unconquered, Han remains safe, Qing and Wei remain independent, and Kai and Yen remain distant, and we fail to secure the title of hegemonic ruler and lay the neighboring feudal lords under tribute, then I willingly accept my beheading as a warning to the entire country for providing disloyal counsel to the sovereign. Chapter 2. On the Preservation of Han. Issue between Han Fei and Li Ssu. In this memorial, Han Fei Su addresses the King of Qin, emphasizing the loyalty and service of Han to Qin for over 30 years. Han has acted as a protective barrier in times of war and a peaceful companion in times of peace for Qin. However, Han faces resentment from all under heaven, as Qin claims all the achievements while Han pays tribute and renders services. Han has heard rumors of Qin's ministers planning to invade Han, which aligns with the chaos plan to unite the forces of all under heaven and weaken Qin. If Qin ignores Han's loyalty and invades, it may face prolonged resistance, and the other states may unite against Qin. Han's strength combined with that of Wei and Chao may lead to the solidification of the perpendicular union and a struggle for supremacy with Qin, ultimately leading to Chao's fortune and Qin's misfortune. Han pleads with Qin to carefully consider the consequences before taking any actions against them. Indeed, if Qin attempts to raid Chao but fails to capture it, and if they turn back to attack Han but cannot achieve victory, their troops, no matter how invulnerable, will grow weary of field operations abroad, and their supply lines from home will fall short. If Qin then gathers its distressed and weakened troops to confront the 20,000 chariots of Kai and Chao, the outcome will not align with the original plan to destroy Han. Thus, if everything is carried out according to the scheme of your Majesty's ministers, Qin will undoubtedly become the target of all under heaven's forces. Even if your Majesty's reign endures as long as metals and rocks, the day to bring the world under one rule will never come. Now, I, your humble servant, propose a different course of action. Send an envoy to Qing and convince the ministers in charge of their state affairs by offering precious presents, explaining the reasons behind Chao's conspiracies against Qin. Simultaneously, send a hostage to Wei to reassure them, and then launch an attack on Chao. This way, Chao will not pose serious trouble despite its alliance with Kai. Once the issues with Chao and Kai are resolved, the problem with Han can be handled through official communication. Moreover, if we can successfully ruin the two countries, Qing and Wei will willingly submit to us. Hence, the saying, weapons are dangerous implements and should not be employed at random. For example, in the competition with Chao, Qin must challenge Kai while simultaneously breaking off relations with Han. Yet, they have not gained the goodwill of Qing and Wei. Should Qin fail in a single combat, it will undoubtedly suffer a tremendous adversity. Schemes are the means to settle affairs and should be carefully examined. The turning point for Qin, whether towards strength or weakness, will happen within this year. Chao has been plotting with other feudal lords against Qin for a considerable time. It would be catastrophic to be defeated by the feudal lords in the first engagement with them. Additionally, it is risky to devise a scheme that might raise the suspicion of the feudal lords. Revealing these potential oversights to the world is not the way to display our strength before them. Therefore, with all due respect, I implore your Majesty to consider these eventualities and foresee that if the expedition against Han is exploited by the perpendicular Unionists, it will be too late to regret the consequences. Li Ssu's Memorial to the King of Qin. Your Majesty, I have reviewed the memorial submitted by the envoy from Han, in which he argues that Han should not be taken. However, I find the viewpoint presented therein to be extremely fallacious. Han is to Qin what stomach and heart diseases are to a man. The man with such ailments might feel inconvenienced, like standing in sticky mud that cannot be brushed off. But as soon as he starts running fast, the problem becomes severe. Similarly, Han, despite paying homage to Qin, poses a constant threat. At the slightest hint of hostilities, she cannot be trusted. While Qin competes with Chao and sends Qing Su to Kai, the outcome remains uncertain. It is unclear whether the friendship between Kai and Chao will be broken by Qing Su's mission. If it remains intact, Qin would have to mobilize all her forces to cope with the 20,000 chariots. Han has not yielded to Qin's kindness but to her strength. As soon as Qin moves against Kai and Chao, Han will cause trouble, much like stomach and heart diseases do. Additionally, if Han and Qing conspire against Qin and other feudal lords respond to it, Qin is likely to face another humiliation similar to what happened at the fort of Mount Yao. Fei, most probably, came here with the intention to elevate his own position in the Han government by demonstrating his ability to save the Han state. He uses eloquent speeches and beautiful phrases to embellish lies and falsify plots, aiming to gain advantages from Qin and gauge your Majesty's mind on behalf of Han. Fei's scheme is self-seeking, and he seeks esteem through an intimate friendship between Qin and Han. His memorial is filled with beguiling contentions and sophistic ability, and I fear that your Majesty might be bewildered by his eloquence, listen to his crooked viewpoint, and consequently neglect to consider the actual conditions. Now I have devised a seemingly foolish scheme as follows. Suppose Qin sends out troops without announcing the purpose of the expedition. The ministers in charge of Han's state affairs will then consider it advantageous to serve Qin. I will request your Majesty's permission to interview the King of Han and persuade him to visit your Majesty. Once he arrives, your Majesty will retain him and not let him leave. Instead, summon a few important ministers from the Han government and negotiate with them. This way, we can further encroach upon Han's territory. Subsequently, your Majesty can instruct Meng Wu to dispatch the garrisons of the eastern districts to guard against potential enemy troops along the border without revealing their objective. The Qis will fear a surprise invasion and accept the proposal of Qing Su. Consequently, before our forces march outside the boundary, we will capture Han while Kai yields to our pressure. When this news spreads among the feudal lords, the Chao clan will be struck with terror, and the Qings will be unsure how to act, eventually deciding to remain loyal to Qin. If the Qings do not make any move, Wei will not be enough to cause worries, and we will be able to encroach upon the territories of the other feudal lords like silkworms eating mulberry leaves and confront the forces of Chao. Your Majesty, please ponder deliberately over this seemingly foolish scheme of your humble servant without hesitation. Accordingly, Qin sent Ssu to the court of Han. Li Ssu went to interview the King of Han but could not secure an audience with him. Therefore, he submitted a memorial, saying, "In the past, when Qin and Han combined their forces and refrained from invading each other, no one in the whole world dared to aggress. Such a situation lasted for several generations. Some time ago, when the 5 feudal lords launched a joint expedition against Han, Qin sent troops to rescue her. Despite Han's central location with a territory stretching scarcely 1,000 li, her traditional policy of serving Qin allowed her to maintain an equal position among the feudal lords in all under heaven. However, on another occasion, when the 5 feudal lords attacked Qin, Han joined them and stood at the front of the allied line to confront Qin's forces beneath the pass of the Armor Gorge. With their armies worn out and their strength depleted, the feudal lords were forced to cease hostilities. Premier Tu Sang of Qin mobilized soldiers and dispatched generals to avenge the wrong of the allies and attacked Qing first. The chancellor of Qing expressed unease, saying, Han at first regarded Qin as unjust and yet kept fraternal terms with Qin to jointly menace the rest of the world. Then she betrayed Qin and took the lead in storming the pass. Han, centrally located, is so fickle that nobody knows what she will do next. As a result, the Allies ceded 10 cities from the best districts of Han to Qin as an apology for their wrong, and hostilities ceased. Ever since Han turned against Qin, the country has been oppressed, her territory invaded, and her army weakened up to the present day. The reason for this is that her rulers have been listening to the flippant theories of wicked ministers without considering the actual conditions. Even if the wicked ministers are put to death, it would be impossible for Han to regain her former strength. At present, Chao is assembling officers and soldiers with the intention of targeting Qin. Therefore, she has sent envoys to Han, pretending to seek a way through the country to attack Qin. In reality, her campaign against Qin will naturally involve invading Han first and then Qin. As the saying goes, when the lips are gone, the teeth are cold. Both Qin and Han share the same hazard, and this eventuality is becoming evident. In the past, when Wei was about to dispatch troops to attack Han, Qin ordered guards to escort her goodwill envoys to Han. Now, I, SSU, sent here by the king of Qin, am not granted an audience. I fear that the present chamberlains of your majesty have inherited the schemes of the former wicked ministers and might once again cause territorial losses for Han. If I, SSU, am denied an audience and have to return to report to His Majesty the King of Qin on my mission, the relations between Qin and Han will undoubtedly be severed. I came here on this mission to present the goodwill of His Majesty the King of Qin to the court of Han and hope to make the best plan for your majesty. There is no reason for your majesty to give me such a cold reception. Now, suppose your majesty executes me in Han, it would not benefit your majesty in any way. Moreover, since your majesty does not heed my counsel, the seed of catastrophe will be fostered. Once Qin mobilizes her troops without stopping, Han will be concerned for the safety of her altar of the spirits of land and grain. After my death and exposure of my corpse in the marketplace of Han's capital, even if your majesty starts considering my loyal but foolish counsel, it will be too late to prevent disaster. When the frontiers are raided, and only the defense of the capital remains, and the sounds of drums and bells fill the ears, even if your majesty then applies my counsel, it will be too late. Furthermore, though the limits of Han's military strength are generally known, she is now betraying Qin. If cities are evacuated and troops defeated, rebels among the rear forces will undoubtedly raid the capital. When the capital falls and the civilians scatter, it will be impossible to recruit more troops. Even if the capital is well defended, Qin will send all her forces to besiege it. With communication cut off, it will be impossible to execute any plans until the situation becomes dire. As the consideration of the whole situation by the chamberlains is not thorough, I urge your majesty to deliberate on it carefully. If anything in my words does not align with actual facts, I humbly request your majesty to allow me to complete my memorial before the throne. After that, if my words prove to be erroneous, I will accept official censure or even death as a consequence. The king of Qin does not indulge in drinking, eating, or amusement, but is wholly dedicated to scheming against Chao. That is why he has sent me, SSU, to speak on his behalf. I have petitioned for a personal interview because I believe it is of urgent importance to discuss these matters with your majesty. If your majesty denies me an audience, the trust of Han will never be proven. Qin will undoubtedly halt its campaign against Chao and turn its forces against Han. Therefore, I earnestly implore your majesty to reconsider and grant me a definite answer. Chapter 3. On the difficulty in speaking. A memorial. I, Fei, am not lacking in confidence when it comes to speaking. However, there are reasons why I hesitate to speak freely. If my speeches are compliant and harmonious, people may perceive me as ostentatious and insincere. If I am sincere and courteous, straightforward and careful, I may be seen as awkward and unsystematic. If my speeches are extensively cited and subtly composed, with frequent illustrations and analogies, I may be considered empty and impractical. If I summarize minute points and present general ideas in a plain and concise manner, I may be deemed simple and lacking discernment. If my speeches are deeply observant of human nature, I may be accused of being self-assuming and conceited. In various situations, I may face different judgments. If my speeches are erudite and profound, I may be seen as boastful but of little use. If I discuss practical matters, evaluating each detail numerically, I may be deemed vulgar. If my speeches are too focused on worldly affairs and do not offend with strong wording, I may be seen as a coward and flatterer. If my speeches deviate from common beliefs and go against human experience, I may be labeled as fantastic. If I speak with wit and eloquence, utilizing rhetorical devices, I may be perceived as flippant. On the other hand, if I abandon literary expressions and speak straightforwardly about facts, I may be seen as rustic. Should I quote poetry and history, drawing lessons from the teachings of past sages, I may be labeled as a mere reciter of books. These various considerations make me diffident and concerned about speaking. Therefore, even though weights and measures may be accurate, they are not always adopted, and even though doctrines and principles may be perfect, they are not always practiced. If your Majesty were to doubt the words of the minister speaking to the throne, that minister could be blamed for a mistake or condemned to death. For example, there were statesmen like Su Shu, who schemed wisely but were killed by the king of Wu; Cheng Ni, who taught wisely but was detained by the ruler of Kuang; and Quan I Wu, who was truly worthy but was taken prisoner by the ruler of Lu. It was not that these three statesmen lacked merit, but rather that the three rulers lacked intelligence. In ancient times, during the reign of Tang, the wisest man of the age was Ai Yin. Although he attempted to persuade the sanest ruler, Tang, he was not welcomed at first. He had to take on the role of a cook, handling pans and bowls, in order to approach Tang and become familiar with him. Eventually, Tang recognized his worthiness and took him into service. This illustrates the saying, though the wisest man wants to persuade the sanest man, he is not necessarily welcomed upon his first arrival. Similarly, King Wen tried to persuade Chao, but he was put in jail. Throughout history, many other wise men faced unfortunate fates. Marquis IH was broiled, Marquis Chia's corpse was dried, Pai Khan had his heart cut open, and Earl May's corpse was pickled. Ai Wu was bound with chains, Cao Kai absconded to Chen, Pai Li Su begged on his way to the capital of Qin, and Fu Yu was sold into slavery and moved from place to place. Sun Tzu had his feet cut off in Wei. Wu Kai lamented over the impending cession of the western river districts to Qin and was dismembered in Chu. Kung Shu So spoke of a man fit to be a pillar of the state but was regarded as unreasonable, leading Kung Sunyang to flee to Qin. Quan Lung Peng was executed. Chong Hung had his intestines chopped into pieces. Yin Su was thrown into a trap among brambles, and the Minister of War, Su Kai, was killed. His corpse floated on the Yangtze River. Tian Ming was stoned to death. Mi Su Qian and Shi Men Pao were killed after quarrels. Tung and Yu was killed, and his corpse was exposed in the marketplace. Sai Yu suffered disaster caused by Tian Chong, and Fan Chu had his ribs broken in Wei. These tens of men were all benevolent, worthy, loyal, and upright individuals in the world, following the right way and true path of life. Unfortunately, they encountered unreasonable, violent, stupid, and crooked rulers, leading to their untimely deaths. Why were these worthies and sages unable to escape death penalties and avoid disgrace? It was because of the difficulty in persuading fools. Therefore, every gentleman must remain cautious in speaking. Even the best speech can displease the ear and upset the heart, appreciated only by worthy and wise rulers. Your Majesty, may you carefully consider this memorial from your humble servant. Chapter 4. On Favorite Vassals, a Memorial. Favorite vassals, if too intimate with the ruler, can cause him personal danger. Powerful ministers, if unchecked, can overthrow the sovereign's authority. Wives and concubines, if not ranked properly, can bring danger to legitimate sons. Brothers, if not subservient to the ruler, may threaten the stability of the country. It is said, The ruler of 1,000 chariots, if not vigilant, will find vassals of 100 chariots nearby, aiming to challenge his authority and destabilize the country. The ruler of 10,000 chariots, if not cautious, will find vassals of 1,000 chariots aiming to do the same. Thus, wicked ministers can multiply, while the ruler's power diminishes. Therefore, the territorial expansion of feudal lords leads to the downfall of the Son of Heaven, and the excessive wealth of ministers leads to the ruler's downfall. Hence, generals and ministers who prioritize their own family's welfare over the sovereign's interests should be removed by the ruler. Nothing is more valuable than the royal person, more honorable than the throne, more powerful than the authority of the sovereign, and more august than the position of the ruler. These four excellences are not obtained from external sources, but are determined by the ruler's own mind and actions. Hence the saying, "The Lord of men, if unable to exercise his equipment with the four excellences, is bound to end his life in exile." The ruler must always keep this in mind. In the past, the ruin of Chao and the fall of Chou were both caused by the territorial expansion of feudal lords. The partition of Qin and the usurpation of Kai were due to the extraordinary wealth of ministers. The same reason applies to the regicides in Yen and Sung. Thus, whether in the cases of Yin and Chou, Qin and Kai, or the modern cases of Yen and Sung, the same truth remains. For this reason, an intelligent ruler, when appointing officials, utilizes their abilities through laws and corrects their mistakes with appropriate measures. There should be no pardoning of the death penalty or remission of punishments. Both actions, known as authority losing on the ruler's part, signify the endangerment of the altar of the spirits of land and grain, as well as the shifting of the state under the deflected authority of wicked ministers. Hence, no minister, regardless of their wealth, should be allowed to include the capital city in their private fief. They should not have personal control over officers and soldiers, even if they have numerous followers and supporters. Similarly, officials serving the state should not be allowed to hold any private governmental office, and those in the army should refrain from cultivating personal friendships. Furthermore, no official should be allowed to loan public treasury funds to individual families. These are measures that an intelligent ruler employs to discourage corrupt practices. Likewise, no minister should have a four-horsed chariot as a personal escort, nor should anyone transport war implements from place to place unless they are a public courier or a herald with urgent messages. Offenders engaging in such actions should face immediate and merciless punishment to ensure the ruler's safety. Chapter 5. The Tao of the Sovereign. Tao is the beginning of all things, the standard of right and wrong. The intelligent ruler, by adhering to the beginning, understands the essence of everything. By adhering to the standard, he discerns between good and evil. Therefore, through emptiness and stillness, he allows nature to take its course, and all things fall into their proper places, and all affairs settle naturally. In emptiness, he comprehends fullness; in stillness, he corrects motion. When one speaks, they create a name for themselves; when one acts, they create a form for themselves. By comparing forms and names, one can determine their true essence, and the ruler need not worry as everything is reduced to its reality. Hence the saying, "The ruler must not reveal his desires, as doing so will lead the ministers to act accordingly." The ruler must not disclose his opinions, as the ministers will adapt their own views accordingly. Another saying goes, "By concealing the ruler's preferences and dislikes, the true intentions of the ministers will be revealed." By disregarding the ruler's experience and wisdom, the ministers will take necessary precautions. Therefore, the wise ruler should not meddle excessively but allow everything to find its proper order. The worthy ruler should not act self-importantly but carefully observe the motivating factors of the minister's conduct. The brave ruler should not get angry but allow every minister to demonstrate their abilities. In such circumstances, the ministers will fulfill their duties, magistrates will have clear work routines, and everyone will be employed according to their unique skills. Such a style of governance is called constant and immutable. Hence the saying, "So quiet, it rests without footing, so vacant, it cannot be located." The intelligent ruler appears to do nothing, yet his ministers tremble in his presence. The ruler's Tao lies in making wise men exhaust their mental energy and using their counsel to make decisions without being overwhelmed. He empowers worthy men and appoints them to office according to their abilities without being limited by his own capabilities. In case of success, the ruler gains the renown, and in case of failure, the ministers bear the blame, ensuring the ruler's reputation remains intact. Thus, even if the ruler is not inherently worthy, he becomes the master of the worthies, and even if he is not inherently wise, he becomes the corrector of the wise men. The ministers toil, and the ruler reaps the rewards. This is the timeless principle of a worthy sovereign. Tao exists in invisibility, its function is in unintelligibility. Be empty and composed, have nothing to do, and from this state, observe defects in the light. See but never be seen. Hear but never be heard. Know but never be known. When you hear a word spoken, do not alter or move it but compare it with the corresponding actions to check for consistency. Place every official with a censor and prevent them from conversing with each other. This will encourage them to exert themselves fully. Conceal the sources of your decisions so that the ministers cannot trace their origins. Abandon the display of your wisdom and stop showcasing your abilities so that your subordinates cannot gauge your limitations. Hold firm to your decisions and ensure they align with the words and actions of your subordinates. Handle matters with care and keep control. Discourage others from coveting your power and prevent anyone from gaining influence over you. If the ruler is not cautious and fails to maintain order, rebellion and treachery may arise. Deal with traitors swiftly, arrest their supporters, secure the gates, and cut off their assistance. This will prevent treacherous individuals from gaining power in the country. Be too great to be measured, too profound to be understood. Establish norms and names, scrutinize laws and manners, and punish those who act as they please. This will prevent traitorous behavior from spreading in the country. The ruler always faces 5 types of delusion: ministers impeding the sovereign, ministers controlling public resources and revenues, ministers issuing arbitrary decrees, ministers distributing personal favors, and ministers supporting dependents. When ministers impede the sovereign, he loses his perspective. When they control resources, he loses his advantages. When they issue arbitrary decrees, he loses his authority. When they distribute personal favors, he loses his reputation. When they support dependents, he loses his supporters. All actions of the ministers should be guided by the ruler's initiative and not driven by their own desires. The Tao of the wise ruler values tranquility and humility as treasures. Without personally intervening, he can discern skill from incompetence. Without being preoccupied with his own concerns, he can distinguish between good and bad fortune. Therefore, without uttering a word himself, he elicits wise responses. Without exerting his own effort, tasks are accomplished. Whenever a response aligns with the question asked, he honors the covenant. Whenever a task is successfully completed, he acknowledges the result. Rewards and punishments arise from the alignment or deviation between task outcomes and spoken commitments. Thus, when a minister speaks, the ruler should assign them a task according to their words, and based on the outcome, evaluate their performance. If the result corresponds with the task and the task aligns with the word, the minister should be rewarded. If there is a mismatch between the result and the task does not match the word, the minister should be censured. It is in accordance with the wise ruler's Tao that every minister should speak words that correspond to their proper tasks. For this reason, the wise ruler bestows rewards with benevolence, like seasonable rain that benefits the masses, and inflicts punishments with severity, like loud thunder that even divines and sages cannot atone for their crimes. The wise ruler neglects no reward and remits no punishment. Neglecting rewards may lead to meritorious ministers relaxing their duties, and remitting punishment may make wicked ministers prone to misconduct. Therefore, individuals of true merit, regardless of their distance or humble status, must be rewarded, while those with real demerits, even if they are close or dear, must be censured. When the reward for the distant and humble and the censure for the near and dear are consistently applied, the distant and humble will not be idle, and the near and dear will not become arrogant. Chapter 6. Having regulations, a memorial. No country remains perpetually strong, nor does any country remain permanently weak. The strength of a country depends on adherence to the law. When the citizens conform to the law, the country becomes strong. When the citizens disregard the law, the country weakens. King Chuang of Qing annexed 26 states and expanded his territory to 3,000 li. However, when King Chuang passed away, Qing began to decline. Duke Huan of Kai also annexed 30 states and extended his territory to 3,000 li, but after his death, Qi's strength waned. King Sang of Yen established strong defenses and expanded his territory by conquering neighboring states, but Yen also declined after his death. King and Li of Wei achieved remarkable military conquests, but Wei's power diminished after his passing. These historical examples demonstrate that the strength and vitality of a country are not permanent but are shaped by the adherence to laws and regulations set forth by its rulers. Thus, as long as King Chuang of Qing and Duke Huan of Kai were alive, their respective countries remained dominant and strong. Similarly, King Sang of Yen and King and Li of Wei maintained their countries' strength during their reigns. However, after their passing, their countries fell into decay, as their ministers and officials abandoned the path of order and embraced chaos. These ministers prioritized their personal interests over the state laws, leading to further confusion and weakness. Therefore, a wise ruler today must eliminate private corruption and uphold public law, ensuring the safety of the people and order in the state. By suppressing private actions and enforcing public law, the ruler can build a strong army and weaken the enemy's forces. To achieve this, capable individuals who follow laws and regulations should be placed in positions of authority, so the sovereign cannot be deceived by deceitful tactics. Likewise, individuals adept at understanding different situations should be entrusted with handling distant affairs, ensuring the ruler's decisions in world politics are well informed. If promotions are based solely on reputations, it would alienate ministers from the sovereign and lead to officials forming treasonous alliances. If appointments are made based on partisanship, the people would prioritize cultivating friendships over adhering to the law, causing confusion in the government. In such a scenario, the state would decline, and those seeking rewards and avoiding punishments would abandon public law and engage in self-serving and wicked schemes. Loyal and innocent ministers often face danger and the death penalty, while wicked ministers, lacking merit, enjoy security and prosperity. This leads to the decline of the state, as good ministers withdraw while villainous ones advance without merit. Officials would forsake legalism and instead practice favoritism, disregarding public law. They would focus on private interests and neglect the welfare of the state and ruler. In such a decaying state, officials lose their dedication to glorify the ruler or serve the country. The court becomes devoid of capable individuals, leading to the decay of the state. A wise ruler must prioritize upholding public law, rewarding merit, and punishing wrongdoing to maintain a strong and orderly state. Loyal ministers must be protected and respected, and the influence of wicked and self-serving individuals must be curbed to prevent the decline of the state. The fact that the court has no capable individuals does not mean it is empty. It signifies that private families prioritize their own interests over the welfare of the state, high-ranking officials seek to honor one another instead of honoring the ruler, and lower-ranking officials neglect their duties while indulging in personal friendships. The reason behind this is that the sovereign does not make decisions based on the law but instead relies on his subordinates for everything they do. A wise ruler ensures that the law selects individuals for positions and avoids arbitrary promotions. The law should evaluate merits and avoid arbitrary regulations. This way, capable individuals cannot be overlooked, and bad characters cannot be disguised. Those who are falsely praised cannot be promoted, and those who are wrongly defamed cannot be degraded. When there is clarity and order between the ruler and the ministers, the state functions smoothly. Therefore, the ruler should focus on scrutinizing the laws. A wise minister, when serving the ruler, pledges loyalty and obedience, vowing not to have conflicting intentions and to follow the ruler's instructions without dispute. The minister speaks and sees only in accordance with the ruler's guidance. The intelligent ruler does not use worthy and clever ministers or wise and capable individuals for selfish purposes. This leads to a harmonious society where people do not intrude into one another's affairs, and there is a balance between the fool and the wise. However, there are those who do not uphold upright behavior. Some abandon their positions and choose their masters at will, while others falsify theories and defy laws, claiming it as loyalty. Some bestow favors and manipulate inferiors to gain personal fame, while others retire from active life to reprove the ruler. Moreover, there are those who serve as envoys to other feudal lords, exhausting their own country's resources and causing trouble during moments of crisis, all to increase their own influence and benefit their families. These practices, prevalent in dangerous times, go against the laws of the early kings and should be eliminated. The law of the early kings stated, "Every minister shall not exercise his authority or scheme for his own advantage but shall follow his majesty's instructions. He shall not do evil but shall follow his majesty's path." In ancient times, during orderly ages, the people adhered to the public law, abandoned selfish tricks, and focused their attention on waiting for employment by their superiors. The Lord of Men, if he had to personally inspect all officials, would find the day too short and his energy insufficient. Moreover, when the superior used his eyes, the inferior would adorn his looks. When the superior used his ears, the inferior would embellish his voice. And when the superior used his mind, the inferior would twist his words. Recognizing the limitations of these faculties, the early kings set aside their own talents and relied on laws and regulations, carefully acting on principles of reward and punishment. This ensured political order, and their laws, though simplified, were not violated. Under the autocratic rule within the realm, the cunning could not apply their deceit, and the wicked found no means to resort to their tricks. No matter how far away from the ruler or how close to the courtiers, they dared not change their words or cover up their actions. The officials in the court, from high to low, did not trespass against each other or overstep their roles. As a result, the sovereign's administrative routine did not consume all his time, and he had sufficient leisure each day. This was because the ruler trusted in his position. However, ministers could mislead the sovereign both in the court and in matters of governance. Gradually leading the ruler away from the starting point, they could make him unaware of the changes. To prevent such misleadings, the early kings employed the south-pointing needle to ascertain the directions of sunrise and sunset. Every intelligent ruler instructed his ministers not to pursue their personal desires outside the realm of law or bestow favors inside the realm of law. In short, they were not to commit any unlawful act. Strict laws were meant to prevent extrajudicial actions and eradicate selfishness, and severe penalties were meant to enforce decrees and reprimand offenders. Legal authority should not be delegated to anyone, and legal control should not be held behind closed doors. If legal authority and control are shared between ruler and minister, various forms of wickedness will emerge. If the law lacks credibility, its enforcement by the ruler becomes absurd. If penalties are not definite, culprits cannot be effectively dealt with. Hence, just as a skilled carpenter uses compasses and squares to measure before marking, and a great genius relies on the laws of the early kings as a guide, so too, if weights and balances are accurately used, excessive weight will be reduced and insufficient weight will be increased. When pecks and bushels are established, excessive quantity will be decreased and insufficient quantity will be increased. By adhering to clear and precise measures, order and fairness can be maintained. To govern the state by law is to uphold what is right and condemn what is wrong. The law does not favor the noble, nor does it yield to the crooked. It applies impartially to all, and neither the wise can reject it nor the brave defy it. Faults of the high are corrected, vices of the low are rebuked. Disorders are suppressed, mistakes are decided against, arrogance is subdued, and crookedness is straightened. The law unifies the folkways of the masses like no other means. It warns officials and overawes the people, rebukes obscenity and danger, and forbids falsehood and deceit. If the penalty is severe, the noble cannot discriminate against the humble. If the law is definite, the superiors are respected and not violated. When the superiors are respected, the sovereign becomes strong and capable of maintaining proper governance. This is why the early kings esteemed legalism and passed it down to future generations. If the ruler discards the law and acts selfishly, there would be no distinction between the high and low. The intelligent ruler controls his ministers with two handles, chastisement and commendation. Chastisement refers to inflicting death or torture upon culprits, while commendation means bestowing encouragement or rewards on men of merit. Ministers fear censure and punishment but are fond of encouragement and rewards. Thus, when the Lord of Men uses the handles of chastisement and commendation, ministers will fear his severity and seek his liberality. However, villainous ministers of the age are different. They secure the handle of chastisement from the sovereign to ascribe crimes to those they dislike, and they secure the handle of commendation to bestow rewards on those they favor. If the Lord of Men relinquishes the authority of punishment and the power of reward to the ministers and lets them administer such affairs, then the people will fear the ministers and disregard the ruler. They will turn to the ministers and distance themselves from the ruler. This is the calamity of the ruler losing control of the handles of chastisement and commendation. As an illustration, the tiger's ability to dominate the dog lies in its claws and fangs. If the tiger were to give up its claws and fangs and let the dog use them, the tiger would then be subjected by the dog. Similarly, the Lord of Men controls his ministers through chastisement and commendation. If the ruler were to cast aside these handles and let the ministers wield them, the ruler would then be controlled by the ministers. In the past, Tian Chong sought and received rank and rewards, which he then bestowed upon the officials and distributed alms among the people. He manipulated the handle of commendation, and as a result, Duke Qian, who lost control over it, was eventually murdered. Similarly, Su Han convinced the ruler of Sung to only bestow rewards and charities, while he handled the handle of chastisement. This led to the molestation of the ruler of Sung. The lesson here is that if any minister uses both handles of chastisement and commendation, the danger to the ruler becomes more serious. To suppress culprits, the Lord of Men must ensure that actions align with their promises, and words must match the assigned tasks. If a minister's actions do not match their promises or assigned tasks, they should be punished. For instance, if a minister promises big accomplishments but delivers little, they should be punished for the discrepancy between their words and actions. On the other hand, if a minister promises little but achieves great results, they should also be punished for not living up to their promises. An example from the past is when Marquis Chao of Han fell asleep while drunk, and the crown keeper covered him with a coat to keep him warm. When the Marquis woke up, he asked who had put more clothes on him and was told it was the crown keeper. Despite the good intention, the Marquis punished both the crown keeper and the coat keeper. He punished the coat keeper for neglecting his duty and the crown keeper for overstepping his role. The Marquis considered their disregard for assigned duties worse than the risk of catching a cold. Therefore, an intelligent ruler should ensure that ministers do their assigned duties and speak honestly. Anyone who neglects their duty or utters dishonest words should face appropriate punishment. When all ministers diligently perform their official duties and speak truthfully, they will not form treacherous alliances. The ruler faces two challenges. If he appoints only worthy individuals to office, ministers may pretend to be worthy to deceive him. On the other hand, if he makes arbitrary promotions, the state affairs will be in constant danger. Likewise, if the ruler favors certain traits, ministers will hide their true intentions to match his preferences, and the ruler will be unable to distinguish between the worthy and unworthy ministers. For example, the king of Yu's fondness for bravery led people to disregard their lives. King Ling of Chu's preference for slender waists resulted in a population of undernourished individuals. Duke Huan of Qi's jealousy and fondness for women led to extreme measures like self-castration by Shu Tiao to administer the harem. Similarly, Su Kuei of Yen's liking for worthies led Su Qi to feign refusal of the state. Ministers will hide their true motives and feelings if the ruler reveals his likes, dislikes, or wants. This can lead to disastrous consequences, as seen in the examples of Su Qi usurping the throne and the mistreatment of Duke Huan. In modern times, if the ruler does not conceal his feelings and motives, ministers may take advantage and cause harm, as observed in the cases of Su Qi and Tianchong. It is essential for the ruler to keep his true feelings hidden, so ministers reveal their true intentions, ensuring that the ruler is not deceived. Chapter 8. Wielding the Scepter. Both heaven and human beings have their destinies. Just as rich wine and fatty meat taste delightful but can cause illness, and beauty with delicate skin and white teeth pleases the senses but depletes energy, it is important to avoid excesses and extremes to avoid harm. The ruler should not display the scepter, as its essence lies in non-assertion. Although state affairs may spread in all directions, the key to their administration is at the center. The wise ruler holds this key and people from all directions come to offer their services. He remains empty, waiting for their contributions, and they exert their abilities on their own. With a clear understanding of the conditions in all directions, he can discern the positive and negative aspects. After appointing attendants on his right and left, he can meet anyone who comes through the gate. He can continue using the two handles without making changes, following the right path of governance. Everything and everyone has a function and utility. When each person works according to their specialized skills, both the superior and inferior will not need to do anything themselves. Like roosters heralding the dawn and cats watching for rats, each entity exercises its unique role, and the ruler need not interfere. If the ruler has to rely on his own special skills, it indicates that things are not going well. If he becomes arrogant and showcases his abilities, he will be deceived by those below him. If he is too wise and lenient, the inferiors will take advantage, leading to disorder in the state. If the ruler does not boast about his wisdom, the inferiors will reveal their sincerity and integrity. He then appoints them to suitable positions based on their words, allowing them to choose their tasks. He grants them powers according to their needs, enabling them to rise in ranks. The way of the sage is to put aside his own wisdom and talent. If he does not discard them, it will be difficult for him to maintain a consistent principle of governance. When people exert their wisdom and talent, disasters occur. When the ruler relies on his own abilities, the state will be in danger and decline. Instead, conform to the way of heaven, follow the principles of human life, and then consider, compare, and investigate matters. Every ending marks a new beginning. Remain empty and composed, be humble in the presence of others, and avoid asserting yourself. The ruler's calamity lies in self-assertion. Nevertheless, while having faith in the words of the inferiors, do not blindly follow them. Then the people will uniformly obey you. In general, the right way to listen to the ministers is to take what they utter as the measure of what they will harvest. The ruler investigates their names to determine their offices and clarifies their duties to distinguish between different varieties of work. The proper way to hear different utterances is to appear like one who is drunken. Never start moving your own lips and teeth before the subordinates do. The longer I keep quiet, the sooner others move their lips and teeth. As they themselves move their lips and teeth, I can thereby understand their real intentions. Right and wrong words coming to the fore in such fashion, the ruler does not have to join issue with them. If the ruler does not share supreme authority with the ministers, the people will see this as a great blessing. The ruler should never discuss matters of right and wrong with the ministers but let them carry on the discussion themselves. If he locks the inner bar and observes the courtyard from inside the room, then just as differences by inches and feet would come to the fore, all ministers will know their proper places. Those who deserve rewards will be properly rewarded, and those who deserve punishment will be properly punished. If everyone faces the consequences of their actions, and good and evil visit them without fail, who would dare to distrust the law? Once compasses and squares are established and one angle is made right, the other three angles will fall into place one after another. If the sovereign lacks mystery and becomes too transparent, the ministers will seize opportunities to take advantage. If the ruler's tasks are not proper, the ministers will change their routines to suit their own interests. To behave as high as heaven and as thick as earth is the way to dissolve all worries. To act like heaven and earth is the way to eliminate discrimination between strangers and relatives. Whoever can emulate the ways of heaven and earth is called a sage. To govern the inner workings of the court, you may appoint men to office, but do not become too attached to them. To govern the external affairs of the court, you may assign one man to one office, but do not allow him to act arbitrarily. If things are done in this manner, nobody can undermine the ruler's authority or gain undue power. If many people frequently visit the high officials' residences, it will cause the ruler anxieties. In the peak of political order, no minister can fathom what is in the ruler's mind. If the ruler closely aligns form with name, the people will attend to their daily affairs. To abandon this principle and seek anything else will lead to serious confusion. It will eventually increase the number of cunning people and fill the ruler's court with wicked ministers. Hence the saying, never ennoble anybody in a way that he may molest you, and never trust anybody so exclusively that you lose the capital and the state to him. If the calf is larger than the thigh, it is hard to run fast. As soon as the sovereign ceases to be mysterious, the tiger will follow him from behind. If he ignores it, the tiger will at first behave like a dog. At this point, if the sovereign does not intervene, the false dog will gain supporters. The tigers will form a party and turn against the ruler. If the ruler does not have loyal ministers, what kind of state does he have? Yet, as soon as the ruler begins to enforce laws, even tigers will become meek. As soon as he imposes penalties, even the largest tiger will become tame. Laws and penalties, being credible, will transform tigers into ordinary human beings and restore order. Any ruler seeking to bring peace to the state must disperse the partisans of powerful ministers. If he does not disperse them, they will enlarge their parties. Any ruler aiming to maintain order in the country must adjust the distribution of gifts. If he neglects this, rapacious individuals will seek extraordinary gains. Fulfilling their requests would be like arming enemies. Lending out such things is not right, as they may be used to attack the ruler. The Yellow Emperor said, superior and inferior wage 100 battles a day. The inferior conceals his tricks while testing the superior, and the superior manipulates rules and measures to diminish the influence of the inferior. Therefore, the establishment of rules and measures is the sovereign's treasure, and the possession of partisans and adherents is the minister's treasure. In such a situation, if the minister does not betray the ruler, it is because his partisans and adherents are not yet strong enough. Therefore, if the superior loses 1 or 2 inches, the inferior will gain 8 or 16 feet. A ruler in possession of a state should not expand the capital. A minister following the true path should not empower his own family. A ruler following the right way should not empower any minister. This is because once the inferior gains power and wealth, they will attempt to replace the superior. So, guard against dangers and be prepared for unforeseen events. Install the crown prince quickly, and many troubles will be averted. To detect culprits within the court and guard against crooks outside of it, the ruler must personally uphold his rules and measures. Ensure that the powerful diminish while the powerless grow, but both should have limits. Never allow the people to form alliances and deceive their superiors with one accord. Let the powerful wane like the moon, and the powerless wax like the heat of a smoldering fire. Simplify orders and dignify censures. Make the application of penal laws clear and definite. Never loosen your grip. Otherwise, you will find 2 rivals in one position. Where there are 2 rivals, there will be constant conflict. When wolves are in the stable, sheep will never prosper. When there are 2 masters in one house, nothing can be accomplished. When both husband and wife manage the household, children will not know whom to obey. The ruler should often restrain his officials' ambitions, never allow them to gain excessive power. If officials become too influential, they will fill public buildings, leaving private houses empty and the ruler deluded. So, restrain them often and prevent any one of them from gaining too much influence. If any official grows too powerful, the ruler's position will be threatened. Again, restrain officials often and never allow any one of them to surpass the ruler in authority. When officials have too much power and the ruler's authority is weak, the state will not withstand challenges. When the state cannot withstand challenges, the ruler's authority will be undermined. Similarly, when there are many illegitimate sons, the heir apparent will face worries and anxieties. The only solution is to restrain officials often and not allow any of them to gain excessive power. If officials are restrained often, the followers of wicked ministers will disperse. When the roots and the stem are removed, the tree is no longer alive. Fill the foaming fountain with mud and never let the water clear. Investigate the hearts of officials and take away their powers. The ruler should wield such powers swiftly and decisively.